G'day, I'm Mike Hayes and welcome to our video on jazz guitar walking chords. Now I'm sure you'll recognise the sound of these walking chords. You would have heard them in the music of Bucky Pizzarelli, Martin Taylor, and of course, Joe Pass. Other musicians such as Thelonious Monk and Oscar Peterson use these type of sounds in their music extensively. Now, the type of walking chords that we'll be studying in this session are the ones that connect dominant seventh chords, particularly dominant seventh chords moving in a cycle progression. And lucky for us, there's tons of examples of dominant seventh chords moving in a cycle progression in the jazz repertoire. Tunes such as All of Me, Basin Street Blues, Sweet Georgia Brown, Up the Lazy River, and of course, in the bridge of I Got Rhythm, our old friend, the Sears Roebuck Bridge. Now, the main thing to watch out for when you're studying these chords is the fingering. The fingering is essential. To get the chord movement smooth, you have to follow the fingering that I'm marking down in the video. The most important thing is to have this little finger moving as a guide finger along the third string. In fact, all the chords in this video will be played on the third string, fourth string, and sixth string. And the idea is to use that little finger as a guide finger. It stays in contact with the third string. The other fingers will dance around, but that fourth finger is the one that remains in contact with the string. Now, of course, you don't have to use these fingerings, but I've tried lots of different ways of playing these chords, and I found that this is the way that you get a smooth transition from one chord to the next. So without any further ado, let's jump in and see how these walking chords work. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Before we play the first example, which essentially is 4 bars of G7, I'd like to explain how I'm working out the bass part. And on this video, we're really only concerned with creating ascending bass parts. A great rule to keep in mind is that if I have to play 4 bass notes on the one chord, which is what's happening in this instance, a G7, if your destination note, meaning the last note in the bar, is a major third away from your first note, and in this instance it will be because I'm really playing a G chord with a B in the bass as the last chord. My first chord is a G7, and you'll notice that the last chord in the bar is a G with a B in the bass. So how I work out the bass notes that I want to play to connect the first note, the G, to the B, is that a great rule is to play a tone and then a semitone and then another semitone. So how that works is, let's have a look at how far away these notes are from each other. If we look at G, we can see that the B note is 4 frets away, which is the interval of a major third. So my bass notes will be a tone, that's G to A, that's my first and second note. My third note now will be an A sharp or a B flat. That's the semitone. And the last semitone, where I'm moving from B flat to B, completes the bar. So it's very much like a person who's on a treadmill. They're not really going anywhere, but I'm wanting to create this sense of movement. So that's an important rule. When you're wanting to create an ascending bass part, and the distance is a major third between your first note and your last note, the rule to keep in mind, which is very effective as far as creating a strong bass line, is tone, semitone, semitone. Let's have a listen to how these chords work. Now, as I said in the introduction, the thing to keep in mind is the fingering. They'll feel a bit weird for a start, but stick with them. In the long run, you'll be pleased you did. Now, I'm not using a pick when I'm playing this, I'm just playing it with my right hand fingers. However, it works just as well if you're using a pick. Here goes. example, I played a chord on each beat. In this next example, I'm going to stretch out the time feel by playing 2 beats on each chord. It's going to be the same chord sequence, but just stretching out the time feel. Here goes. This particular chord sequence is often referred to as Monk's moves, in reference to Thelonious Monk. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the first one to use this particular sequence. However, I think that's a good name for the chord sequence because you can certainly hear these sounds in Thelonious Monk's compositions. Now let's have a look at some application for these walking chords. Let's take the first 4 bars of a blues in G. So essentially we'd have 4 bars of G7. What I'm doing for the first 3 bars is I'm creating some movement by just moving the chord up a semitone or down a semitone on the 4th beat. So in the first bar I have 3 beats of G7, then raising the pitch just on the 4th beat and playing an A flat 7, back to G7 for 3 beats in the second bar, this time lowering the pitch of the chord by a semitone, playing a G flat 7th on the 4th beat. In bar 3 I'm using the same idea as in bar 1, 3 beats on G7th, the last beat being on A flat 7. And then in the 4th bar I'm using our walking chords to create some dramatic effect because I'm wanting to go to a C chord. And you can see why this works because the last chord in the 4th bar is a G with a B bass, and that's going to give us a semitone movement over to the C7th in bar 5. Let's have a listen. For this next example, I'm going to do exactly the same thing that we've just played for the first 4 bars. Then when I get to bar 5, we're going to go through the same sequence again, only this time we're creating walking chords from a C7th chord. And you can see in the bass there, we have the bass movement we spoke about. We're creating a tone from C to a D, and then a semitone movement from D to E flat, and then a semitone movement from E flat to E. So that's that same bass line using that initial rule of a tone, semitone, semitone for creating an ascending bass line. In bars 7 and 8, for variety, I'm going to move the chords down chromatically. 2 beats on G7, 2 beats on G flat 7, then in bar 8, 2 beats on F7, 2 beats on E7. Then in bar 9, I'm going to use our walking chords. There's the bass line again, starting on an A note, moving up a tone to B, up a semitone to C, and then a semitone again up to C sharp, and this connects really well to the D7th. In bar 10, I'm continuing our walking chord sequence. This time I'm starting on the D, moving up a tone to E in the bass, semitone higher up to F, and then another semitone higher to F sharp, and this leads nicely over to bar 11 where I have the G7 chord. In bars 11 and 12 we have a turnaround based on a cycle chord progression, also using a series of flat 5 substitutions. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but let's have some fun with the blues first. Here we go. Okay, time to have a look at that turnaround in bars 11 and 12. The first chord in bar 11 is G7. The next chord, the F7, might be a little bit tricky to understand where it's coming from. But let's think about the next chord, which is E7. Now, if we thought about the circle of fifths, if we had a look at what the chord would be before E7, and that's moving anti-clockwise around our circle of fifths. And of course the chord would be B7. The flattened fifth of B7 is F. And if we simply change the bass note from B in the B7 and make it an F, which would be the flattened fifth of B7, we find that the other two notes, the A and the E flat, or as it was in the B7 was D sharp, remain exactly the same. So the only thing that happens is the bass note changes. And then we have a very smooth transition from an F7 to an E7. Let's have a listen to both examples where I'm going to play G7, B7, then E7. And then straight after that I'll play G7, F7, E7. There's a subtle but important difference. Have a listen and see if you can hear it. And now for this last example, I'm going to play the basic set of chords in the cycle progression for the turnaround, which will be 2 beats of G7, 2 beats of E7, then 2 beats of A7, 2 beats of D7. And then in the next 2 bars, you'll see that each one of these chords, the E7th, A7th and D7th, is approached by a chord that is a semitone higher. And that's simply using the flat 5 substitution. So we've already explained where the F7th comes from, and that leads into the E7th. The flattened fifth of E is B flat, so that explains the next chord, B flat 7. Moving to A7th in bar 12, the flattened fifth of A is E flat, that explains the E flat 7th chord. Moving to D7th, the flattened fifth of D is A flat, and that explains the A flat 7. Okay, let's have a listen to that turnaround, and don't forget to really pay attention to the fingering of these chords. Here we go. Okay, that's it for this session, folks. Don't forget, if you have any questions or comments, to leave them in the comment section below this video. And if you like the type of things that we're doing, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell. That way you won't miss out on any of our future lessons. And as always, I look forward to catching up with you again next time. Bye for now.